there. This week we will be looking at the role of thinking in our everyday lives. The Silvercloud program goes into great depth about this topic, and the reason being is that thinking is the root cause of making us feel the way we do. My favourite way of looking at this is to use this picture, what we're going to put up for you. And this picture shows you that if you can't change it, then change the way you think about it. I'm sure you've heard that before. This image shows quite clearly that the problem is in the mind. The thoughts can be problematic one minute and absolutely fine the next. As it shows you in the picture, you can have black clouds with thunder and lightning, and then in a few hours, you can have a sunny day or sunny thoughts. Your thoughts change all the time. The problems aren't out there in the world, they are created here in our heads. It's almost like we've got a second life going on in our heads. This image also shows clearly how quickly things change from looking bad to being okay. And I hope you can see that from the picture. On the surface now, this looks like a really easy thing to understand, but to really know this can be life-changing. It takes the responsibility of the world out there being a big problem to put the responsibility back on each of us for how we feel. We are responsible for turning the black clouds into sun and for turning the sun back to rain, as in the picture. So we'll take the picture down now. So what I'd like you to do is to take a few minutes to really understand that. Because I know when I first heard that it was the outside world was just the outside world and it was my thinking that was causing me the problem, I wasn't happy. I wanted the world to make me happy. I wanted my job to make me happy, my partner, the kids. I didn't want to take the responsibility of all my happiness myself. But as I started doing CBT, I learned that my well-being was reliant on me being in a good state of mind, and the better state of mind that I was in, my life also became better. Knowing that you're responsible for how you feel takes the pressure off everyone else and gives you the opportunity to be the master of your own ship. Learning to live this way takes time and practice. And we've been in the habit so long of hoping that life will make us happy that we don't know anymore how to make ourselves feel good. We spend a lot of our time automatically thinking and doing what we did the day before, no questions asked. So if we really want to change and feel better, then we really need to have an approach to what's going on in our minds. So the first thing to really come to terms with is to notice that you are thinking, just to notice you're thinking in the first place. Because a lot of us just go around heads down, driving, doing things, and we don't realize that we're lost in a complete bubble of thought. Now, I'm not saying that you have to sit there all day observing your thoughts. I'm not saying that. You just get on with your life, but you notice that your thoughts are always with you. They're always the background noise of our lives. You hear a lot of people say that when they go out for a walk, for example, they go out to clear their heads. But what happens for most people is that their thinking increases and their heads are full. So a great thing to try is to notice that this is happening and then welcome the thoughts along on the walk with you. So when you go out on your walk, don't try to get rid of your thoughts. They won't go anywhere. They'll just come straight back. The big key is to accept the thoughts are there, to notice them, and then look at what's in front of you on the walk. Find something external to focus on. Anything will do, just one thing, and then notice how your thoughts change. So what I'm trying to teach you is that CBT is a process of learning how to be with your thoughts instead of going off on little journeys in your head every time a thought comes along. If you can stop right now and say, I'm thinking, then it's like you've taken a step back from the thought. You're noticing the thought instead of getting caught up in it. So you tell yourself that just because you're thinking something doesn't mean it's true. Probably most people in the world have said to themselves at some point, God, I'm so stupid, why did I do that? And if you pause and notice the thought, you might be able to see that your mind was making a comment about you based on one thing. You felt stupid for a minute, then you base your whole thinking on that one thing. So you don't have to believe everything you tell yourself. The Silvercloud program takes you through a whole section on proving that thoughts aren't true and thoughts just come and go. So if you're interested in that area, the Silvercloud program is great for that. When you've noticed what you're thinking, it's quite fun to watch what actually happens to the thoughts. And now this sounds quite tricky, but it's a really great habit to get into, because every single thought that you've had has eventually gone away. It's always gone away. So if you try and watch a thought and see what happens, and you can watch the process of a thought and it goes away, and then another thought comes along. It's a bit like you're in a pipeline of water, and the water's constantly moving through, and the thinking is constantly moving through, just like a pipeline full of water. Now, and a really helpful way to relate to your thinking in a new way, so that you can start noticing it a bit more, is to see your thoughts as something separate from you. Now, some people see them as clouds in the sky. Some people see them as boats on a river, maybe even cars. I quite like the fish swimming in a pond, and I quite like waves breaking on the shore. Now, don't think that those things I've just told you about are cliches. They sound like, oh yeah, my thoughts are just like clouds in the sky. I've heard that before. You may have heard that before, but if you actually lie on your back in the garden and you look up at the sky and you watch the clouds, you will actually see the blue sky, or grey in Wales, is always there underneath, but the clouds, they just come and go. And the thoughts are exactly like that. If you sit and watch your thoughts, or lie and watch your thoughts, you will see they come and go, and they change throughout the day. If you want to, you can even notice if your thoughts are loud or quiet, fast or slow. Are they happy or sad? There's so much to learn about your thinking. And another thing to notice is you don't have to do anything with your thoughts. You don't have to do anything with the cloud that's passing in the sky, for example, or you don't try and stop the waves breaking on the shore. Your thoughts just come and go. So you notice what's happening and you get curious about how it's happening. And so what I'd like to do now is show you some simple techniques that I used when I started noticing that a lot of my time I was lost in thought. So I'd end up feeling bad, and I couldn't work out why. And it was because I was paying so much attention to my thinking as opposed to my surroundings, that I was starting to feel bad. I thought, why am I feeling bad? I want to walk. And it was because I was paying attention to my mind. So what I've got here is a little card. I don't know if you can see that. And it says notice on the top. Okay, so I was a Samaritan in a previous existence, and I used to keep a little card like this close to me when I was doing a phone call with somebody. And I had a few questions on there, and I used to use my little key card. And when people phoned up, I'd just check I was, saying the right thing. And before long, it became really natural to me to use this card, until after a few weeks, I didn't need it anymore. It just gave me that confidence in the early days to be confident enough to speak to people on the phone. And I'd recommend the same for you guys with thinking. You can make a little card like this. I've got another one here, if you can see that. It's a little card that's got the word notice on it. Now, notice is a great word because it reminds you to notice that you're thinking, observe that you're feeling what's on your mind, trying to notice that thoughts will pass. If possible, you can zoom out, connect with the environment, and then exhale. Wow, yeah, I was lost in thought. I was up in my head. I was living a second life in my mind. I was in Benidorm, but actually I was in Landod. Your whole thinking just takes you to all kinds of places. I'll make a few of these cards, and we'll get to put them on the Mind website, so that if people want to use a notice card, or you can make them for yourself. Because if there's a technique that you find useful with CBT, we always say make things. It's a real making and Blue Peter kind of thing, CBT. So you can make things that you find useful. This little card's great. It's very small scale, but it's really, really useful to remind you. Another technique that I really like, which Becca's now going to just put up the little technique on the screen, and it's called the Voice of Truth technique. And this one, so when you have a negative thought about yourself or about your life that you'd like to try to get rid of, write down the thought, and then immediately underneath, write the real truth of the situation. So say the real truth is maybe something that you say to a friend. So you write down the first one, you write down the thought, say, I don't feel good enough today. And then you write down straight away underneath what you'd say to a friend. And you would never talk to a friend like you talk to yourself. A lot of us are quite hard on ourselves, but if we were talking to a friend, we'd always do that with a lot more kindness. So this techniques helps you learn to sort of just be kinder and more compassionate to yourself when you're having a difficult thought. And it's another good one that you could make a little card for even and just use it a lot and get into the habit of doing that. So I hope that's been helpful today. What I've really talked about is a CBT mindful approach today to your thinking, to noticing your thinking. CBT also takes a different approach where you can challenge the thoughts that you're having, and then you get to choose which way you would like to approach your thinking. Some people like to challenge their thinking. They like to journal, they like to write it down, they like to explore all the thoughts. Some of us realize there's just so much thinking going on, it's better if I just learn to notice and let it go. Or you can do a mixture of the two. It really depends on your preference. You may want to examine your troubling thoughts, as this may be useful to you. And if you're having a lot of trouble thinking, then it could be really helpful to discuss these things with someone else, or go through the Challenging Thoughts program on Silvercloud. At the end of the day, we are left alone with our thoughts. So you have to decide which approach works best for you. Knowing that the voice in your head is always there and choosing not to respond to it as much as possible is one option. Challenging your thoughts is another option. So there's some good options with CBT for thinking. So either way, if we went back to that picture we saw in the first place, if you can remember that, or even if Becca puts that up, if you can't change things in your life, you have to choose to change the way you think about it. Okay? So you either develop your mindful approach or you challenge, but you have to find a way to change the way you think about it. Because if you don't change the way you think about it, it will always be the same. And a little card just to finish that I look at every morning. I bought this in a little bookshop in Hay-on-Wye. Think less, do more. And that's one of my favorites because I was a real big overthinker. So what I learned to do was think less and do more. And the more you do, the more you get outside, the more walks you go on, the more you notice that you're lost in thought. You just end up doing more, thinking less, and having basically a more fulfilling life. So I'd really recommend with CBT, like I said, collecting things, little cards, things that are useful that remind you. Well, I hope that's been useful today in some way, and I'll look forward to seeing you all again next week with a new topic. Okay, thanks very much. Bye.